There's always a small delay. Just feels like it takes a long time. All right. Start with prayer.
It's a mystery to me why. I don't want to be a tech guy. Why it takes so long to get on sometimes.
Well, we've been riding smoothly. I don't know what happened on this one. That's weird.
Well, we're together now. We're on. I'd be happy to. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, help us to appreciate each person around us who is made in your image and likeness. Especially help us to appreciate those who are ill, those who are lonely, those who are aged, and those who are yet unborn. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Welcome. Hi. You have notes.
I do. Absolutely.
I don't know that people know that what we do is just rotate around. Each different day, somebody else proposes a topic.
That's right.
So today is John, Sunday is me, then Mike goes back to you.
I'm already working on it for Monday.
We have Sunday. If you tune in Sunday, there'll be Is Nature Our Friend?
That's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a fun one.
And tonight's topic is?
The generation gap.
Oh, okay.
The generation gap. And why do so many people now see the elderly as, or those who are older, incompetent with their smartphones, incompetent in getting it? They're not woke, right? So many of the people, now are you woke? And I remember a few weeks ago, somebody came up to me and said, Father, are you woke? And I was like, I've never heard the term. I said, I think I'm awake.
I've never heard it. Are you woke?
Are you woke? Well, the term is used the most with the whole problem with Hollywood and NBC employees and of sexual abuse and forcing women to do things sexually, Harvey Weinstein. And there's a cultural awakening to how bad this is. And so when I asked, well, what does it mean? They explained that to me. And I'm going, well, I guess I've been woke ever since I studied the Bible because it condemns that. All along.
Why is it woke? Why not awake?
I have no idea.
I think it's a fairly old English upper class term that's used to indicate a certain class status.
Yeah.
If something's woke, but it's been converted into American English to mean, are you cool? Are you with it? Are you au courant with whatever the values of the day are?
Maybe it's just rhyming words. The issue used to be treated as a yoke. So now you have to be woke.
Right? But it's like all the generations that came before didn't have this insight. And I just thought it was fascinating. And the more I began to talk to this person, the more they had this really negative attitude towards anyone who was older than they were, which was about 25.
Well, when I was a little boy, I remember in the 1960s, there was the anthem, "Don't trust anyone over 30." And I was like 8, so I had no worries about that one back then.
We sort of left that one in the dust.
Yeah.
In fact, when I turned 30, I came home from work the day of my birthday, and some friends had left a black wreath on my door. Now that you're 30, much sympathy.
It's all downhill. It's all downhill. But have we begun to lose the respect for those who are older. I mean, the only place that I see that's sacred for old people is Congress. They just don't get out.
Well. AOC's trying to correct that.
Yeah, yeah.
By adding a certain level of foolishness on top of what the foolishness that's already there.
Well, I mean, and there's some old people. I mean, the Speaker of the House and people. I mean, they're not young people anymore. And you look at the Senate and Congress is a geriatric ward. But let's not talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, there is, I believe, a growing disdain for those who are older, especially in my own thought, is because their values are so different and they don't get this generation that has it all together. So many are pro-life. So many don't understand or reject homosexuality and gay marriage. So many are not in tune with legalized marijuana. There's sort of different values there. And you have almost a generation that tends to demonize. If you're not in agreement with me, I'll demonize and I'll make fun of you. And we look at what's going on in the universities. And it's sort of like, wow, if you're not hip, if you don't get it, you're pretty sad.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's been a transformation in universities in the last 60 years, which used to be the place of maximum tolerance, where you would debate the ideas, not be afraid to argue, because you're both seeking the truth in the argument. And now there are places of consummate intolerance where you don't dare raise a point for being accused of being unwoke.
Well, I grew up watching Firing Line. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Bill Buckley.
Bill Buckley,
right.
And he would bring in the best liberal intellects. And my dad would look at that. That's a great point. Well, he had a good point. And just go back and forth and saying, he was in agreement with Buckley maybe. But he would say that the other person made a great, Gore Vidal, that was a great point that he made. And what happened to that? Wisdom for the sake of wisdom and good thinking for the sake of good thinking.
I don't even imagine that a show like that could even last. In the market, the media will always try to satisfy the need that they perceive there, and there doesn't seem to be much interest in having that kind of genuine debate.
What happens when a culture disdains those who have the most experience?
We make more mistakes.
Well, what do we learn? We learn from our mistakes, right? And if we can avoid a few, it'd be nice.
Mm-hmm. But the best way to learn is from other people's mistakes, which is what the wisdom of the elderly or the more seasoned members of our society is all about.
Yeah.
So tell me, Father, what did you do after you got that black gift wreath on your 30th birthday?
Well, I should have had a drink, but I didn't.
But your neurons were still functioning. You were getting wiser and wiser by the day.
That's right, absolutely right. But that was only because when I was like 22, I made a promise to myself: I'm never going to drink alone. With friends, social stuff, whatever. That's different. But at home alone, I don't even want to get started there.
Mm-hmm.
The father of some very close friends of mine is alcoholic, and I'm not even going to take a chance on messing around with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I probably watched TV and corrected papers. But I don't get it. I've been listening, trying to think of different cultures. If there was any culture in the past that didn't respect the elders. Because the Asian culture, respect for the elders is
Tremendous, yeah.
tremendous.
And in fact, I know from ancient civilizations, through, well, Thomas Aquinas into the Middle Ages, when he needed to have authority to support a proposition, the oldest authority that he could pick was always the best one. So St. Augustine would be a great authority, but if you can cite an earlier philosopher than St. Augustine, that would be even better, because the assumption was always you're building on the ancient knowledge, and what's oldest and truest is always the best. And we flip that on its head now.
Yeah.
And partly that's a marketing thing, I think. And no one wants to buy the oldest used car you could find.
But how much do you think the entertainment industry has to do with this? I mean, just when was the last time you had somebody who was elderly and wise? How many times do we see, especially with men, the married with children syndrome?
Oh,
Fools who are dumb and totally selfish and self-absorbed. And it's
the
the
stereotype.
kings, or it's the kids who are really smart and insightful.
And savvy. Yeah.
So, when was the last time there was a show where
You know, when you said that, something just popped in my mind. Do you remember the Republican National Convention when Clint Eastwood got out and
Yes.
sat in the chair there?
yes,
I mean, he's up there in years. He looked pretty old, and yet he talked for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and he had some very piercing insights. He's a wise man, but that's very rare. You don't see that very often.
no,
I don't know if the entertainment industry certainly plays a part in it. I say Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, when my godchildren were growing up, they're 15 and 16 now, but from 8 through 13, had all these shows that they loved: Zack and Cody, The Sweet Life, Wizards of Waverly Place, Pair of Kings. There were all kinds of them, and on all of them, the smart ones were the kids, and the butt of the joke was always the parents. Until the very end, something fell apart, and the parents had to fix it. But that was the exact opposite of Father Knows Best,
From the 1950s, yeah.
or My Three Sons, where they would, not give credence to the parents' advice, get into trouble, then the parents would have to come in and fix it for them again.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what happened to that. It makes me wonder, though, what role lowering the voting age to 18 had to do in this. Because now political parties have to appeal to 18-year-olds to get their votes. Because up in the 60s, there was still respect for elders.
But it went from 21 to 18, and anyone who's campaigning for office knows that the least reliable part of the electorate are the 18 to 21-year-olds. They hardly ever vote. They're good volunteers
Yeah.
for
But-
offices,
But to appeal to them, what do you have to do? Raise their level of and essentially try to appeal to their vanity. You're 18, you're smart, you're wise, you can serve in the army, and blah, 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 and you know what's going on. And the more you pat them on the back and raise the ego, the more likely they are to vote for you.
but Mike, in law, young lawyers, do you see young lawyers going and say, I need your advice, teach me? Or are they starting to come in and say, I know everything, why do I have to ask you? Because I'll be honest, I see an awful lot in so many sectors of society who come in, they don't need to ask any advice. If they're not recognized immediately and are on this vertical path to be the CEO in 3 years, they get discouraged.
right?
But there's a hyper criticalness that I think a lot of employers are seeing now, and they're very concerned.
Well, law is interesting because most of us who go to law school, it takes 3 years to go through. And at the end, after you graduated from law, you don't have a clue about what it means to be a lawyer. It's an academic study, and practicing law is a people business. So some people might be average law students, but if they've got the people skills, they can become excellent lawyers. The biggest trouble usually is the young person who's done really well in law school, very good, bookish smarts, the book smarts. But then they get into a practical situation. How do I apply this in a concrete area? And they get very concerned sometimes when the client asks them a question or challenges them on a point because they're not used to that. So there is that paradigm of the young lawyer who knows everything and doesn't need any gray hair to get involved in it. But that person only lasts about a week. And they learn fast. Because what you don't want to do is say something foolish. So you learn that there's a lot of wisdom from people who have been around the block before. And if you can take that in and learn from others' mistakes, you can be a good lawyer.
Well, I was ordained when I was 30, and I was terrified. I hate to admit, I was terrified that I was going to give bad advice. And I had 2 or 3 really good, holy, experienced priests that I would bug. I had the situation, and I said, that that was the best education for 2 or 3 years. That was better than any seminary class I ever had. And I valued it. I just...
To see their minds and their hearts at work.
Absolutely.
Encountering their problem.
Yeah. The thing,
mentorship.
What you said about lawyers applies to young priests too. Exactly the same thing. You have all the academic study in the seminary, and you've had a year of internship. Just scratch the surface of what you're going to be doing.
Right.
And then, you step into a parish with all this knowledge in your head. But this is a people job. You know all the rules, you know scripture and everything, but it is a people job.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into the trap of essentially doing the opposite of what Jesus did. Meaning, okay, everything I know, the law is up here, and the knowledge is up here, and the people are down here, and it's up to you people to serve what I know, rather than the opposite. Well, you gotta see this. People are up here, and all of this is meant to serve people.
Exactly.
And it can take a while to figure it out. If you come out thinking, I already know everything. I'll give you an example. When I've been on the Council of Priests twice. Once when I was representing the newly ordained back in 99 through 2003 or something like that. And then when I was the dean of the deanery before I got transferred over here. But the second time, very interesting because we had the representative of the more recently ordained, essentially the millennials.
Okay.
And one of the things you have to do for the first 5 years of ordination is there are regular meetings. I'm trying to remember if it's monthly. I think we were 4 times a year every quarter, but they may be doing monthly now at the recently ordained. So, one time the rep comes to the Council of Priests, and they have this paper prepared. What the priorities of the diocese should be. Why you're all getting it wrong and why you're not listening to us. We know what's needed.
That would have been an interesting moment.
I thought the Archbishop and the other guys, the other deans and the bishops were overly polite to him. Thank you for your interest and you're talking about this. But the Archbishop said, but when you present a paper, that puts it in a different category than just sitting down and talking about it. Now it's a paper that you're presenting to us and so forth. And, oh wait, we didn't mean it like that or whatever. But I'm wondering, what are you going to say? The junior members don't tell the law firm how to run the firm. First, you learn what the job is.
Mhm.
And,
Well,
and
there's
that applies to almost everything.
Well, there's a
First, you learn the
structure.
job. Yeah.
And there's a structure in any institution, any organization,
Yeah.
where you're hopefully having that knowledge come down from the most senior members so that you keep the integrity of the organization whole.
Yep.
But also, and this is important, the millennials, the younger people do have a lot to offer. They've got that energy, the blood, the new blood, the interest.
Absolutely.
And
They have
you
so
need-
much to offer.
you
They have
need
so
both.
much to offer. Absolutely. One bit of advice that one of these priests gave me, and when I said, how do you get somebody who's dying to go to confession? Because I asked them, hey, you want to go to confession? They and he said, best thing I ever did was whenever I visit somebody who's in the hospital that's older or seriously ill, I start a conversation with, any regrets? What are your regrets? Would you like to include that in the confession? Oh yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Talk, and I've done that for years, and I have learned more about wisdom. Because when you're looking at eternity, there is such a different perspective. And all of a sudden, I'm weighing all of my decisions from the prospect of heaven, eternity, death,
Mhm.
and so many things that were important are not important. And I think that's one of the most important things that brings a value to those who are older. They're thinking about that. They're thinking about their regrets. They're thinking about what would have been so much more meaningful. And when you put it on that level,
Mhm.
there's so much wisdom.
I was just
Not
thinking
that everybody who's older has wisdom, but
I was just thinking about one bit of wisdom right there that might be helpful to a lot of millennials and other young professionals who are working so hard. The expectations for hours now in a profession are just absolutely insane. They're not.
Yep.
It's not healthy, physically or mentally, and yet that demand is there to put in the 60, 70, 80 hours a week, month after month after month, and some of the a lot of millennials end up reacting against that and saying, that's just too much. I'm not too much is being asked of us, and maybe there's some institutional excess there that expects that. But I've heard it said that no elderly person reflecting on his life ever thought, gosh, I didn't work enough when I was in my 20s. I should have put more hours in the office. A lot of them will say, though, I wish I had developed more friendships. I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had seen my children grow up and be with them.
and that's what I hear when I ask the question, what are your regrets? And for the first time in their life, they confess that. And the peace that they receive is unbelievable. I never thought about confessing that. What a beautiful confession.
Mm-hmm.
I preached about this. One of the great gifts is to be able to grow old, even though things start to hurt.
Beats the alternative.
But your joints get sore and arthritis sets in and you can't remember names and what was that word again that I was trying to think of and all of that stuff. But the closer you move to that way or that way, the closer you get to death, the more it gives you perspective to look back at, why did I think these things were so important?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a wisdom of measuring that. Man, I had that all wrong. Why couldn't I see it when I was younger? The other thing that comes along with age is the wisdom to keep your mouth shut and know people are going to make their own mistakes and they have to learn just like I did by experience. And so a lot of the wisdom is in people who are older who are keeping their mouth shut unless they're asked.
Well, I just hope I was lucky because I had a dad that died at 92, and I was asking him advice until he was 92. He was my greatest go-to person, and I don't know. I feel it's an honor and a grace to have people who've been through it, who've seen it, and are going to give you the wisdom of the truth. It sets you free, and you have to always make your own decision. But the ability to ask for help, for me, it's been the most important thing in my life. One of them, at least.
That's beautiful. That really is. And then the counterpoint to that is there are people of wisdom who are out there who would be happy to be asked, but they're not going to intrude.
Right. Yep. And that's
So you need to have that courage as a
openness for
millennial
both.
to
Yes.
to say, I don't know it all, or maybe I can learn something from this person. And then you're also now engaging the elderly person and recognizing their value and their dignity to be part of, to have something to share.
So, the wisdom of the elderly should be to know that the millennials are going to make mistakes. They're going to make the same mistakes just like we did. But the wisdom of the millennials should be there aren't very many new ideas. And most of the things, most of the things that I thought were important back then had already been tried and they've succeeded or failed. Most of the ideas, you hear in politics and so forth, you can do some research, just like the big thing is socialism right now. Well, look where it's been tried and see what's happened. Look what happened in Venezuela.
That's gone around several cycles.
It has. It has. And rather than ignoring it first, okay, well, wisdom would say, well, let me look where this has been put into practice and see what happened. My niece came back. She's 83. She's going to be 37 this year. Went to Long Beach State. And her father has been probably Republican all his life. But almost 20 years ago, she came back from college at Long Beach State. And she said to her dad, well, the best form of government is communism. And he, and this, and she says, her answer was, well, they just didn't do it right.
Poor execution.
Yeah, poor execution. Okay. And now, 20 years later, she laughs at it and said, I thought I knew what I was talking about.
But I think some of that too, I remember that when I was coming back from college and I'd have these ideas and I talked to my parents about them, and partly is just being the advocate. I'm advocating, but I really want to know what my parents think about the idea. And I remember their wisdom coming back to me and, well, have you thought about this? Maybe you ought to read it this way. And those were great moments for me, great insights.
Well, there's a point here that's really important because especially with parents, and kids can come up with some crazy ideas and say, did you know this, 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 and this? And the tendency is to say, that's crazy. That's just dumb. Which doesn't help.
No.
But the better is, really, where did you read this? Explain this to me. Bring this out. Where is this proven? This is fascinating.
Right.
And the wisdom of what we need to do is help this person to think in a logical manner and prove and not just go by gut reactions. I think that is so important.
It's a great skill set to have.
That's wisdom. And not to react and say, you're stupid, you're an idiot. No, because most of the time it comes from a really good place. Most of the time.
I know you made me think of Judge Judy, but it doesn't matter to her, young or old. She'll call many people an idiot.
Well, when you're having a well, she's got a TV show.
Yeah.
So she's got her own spiel to get out. If you're having a conversation, it doesn't get fostered by telling the person off the bat you're an idiot. That kind of shuts everyone down. And if you can see that little, even if it's a little kernel of wisdom in the other person's speech or thought, you're both better off by having shared a little bit of the truth.
And ask why. Why do you believe this? And why do you believe that? And why? Because too many times they haven't thought through it in a logical and good way.
Mm-hmm.
And you begin to shoot holes through it and just say, well, why don't you need to pray about it, think about that. And
One of the things I find helpful sometimes before, in the discussion, just repeat back what I thought I heard. And say, am I here understanding what you're saying?
Yep.
And repeat it back and see if I've got some understanding or if I'm just in my own mind.
That is such a great technique. We have, lawyers deal sometimes with disputes, and ultimately you get together to settle the dispute. You're around the table, and sometimes you have a mediator who's there. And the most skilled mediators almost have a photographic memory. You tell what your side of the case is, and then after you say it, they repeat it, almost word for word. And oftentimes the party is shocked because, did I really say that? And then the other side has to keep quiet, but listen to what was said, that exchange with the mediator, and then it's their turn. And when they then say their side of the story, it's a completely softer, more realistic version because they know the mediator is going to repeat it back to them exactly. And that helps bring the parties together. I think that's one of the greatest psychological, it's not a trick, it's a behavior to let yourself be heard. Have other people speak what you just said.
And don't always get it right. No, that's not exactly what you said. That's not what I meant.
There you go. That's the difference right there.
Yep.
The
Let's
words
try
versus
again.
the intent.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that with married couples. Yep. Sit back there and.
But I also think that you used to grow up in one town. You'd have your great-grandparents, your grandparents, and your parents. And it's a community. How many people live within 5 miles of their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents? You don't have that anymore.
It's very rare. Yeah.
And I think that was also when you show deference and respect and love and veneration for those who are older, even though they can be difficult, it teaches you. And I think we're so mobile too that it has an effect on all of us.
I think our Western culture, I've read about this, we might be the first culture in the history of humanity in which the elderly are not revered and respected. And that's a fairly recent change, I think. Just going back.
I mean, it's fascinating to me because what we do first, rather than care for the elderly, put them in a home, put them in people put them in this home, that home. How much money are they costing? It's how much a month. The health care is going to be cost how much, and put a monetary value on it. Till the coronavirus hits and everybody's up front. They're dying.
Well, there's somebody who was for the Labour Party in England who came out and said, let's be honest. He said, I think this is a grace because our healthcare system, which is a socialist healthcare system, there was so many people waiting for healthcare. And he says, listen, this is going to weed out so many of our older people so that those who have a better quality of life can get better health care.
Shortens the line.
It shortens the line. And he says, I'm just being honest with what everybody else is thinking. What's wrong with this? This is nature saying, come on. And one of the biggest things that I think as a church we need to help people understand is that older people, their dignity and their goodness and their utility a lot of times is in their prayer and their suffering. And I've seen people who are in bed and they can hardly do anything. I just went and visited somebody who was a tremendous mind, who was always productive. And he said, I just want to die. I want to die. I'm not productive anymore. And there's so much pain. And I looked at him and I said, how many children? He said, 5. How many grandchildren? He said, 22. I said, okay. Do you know that every single day that you're in this bed suffering, you can win graces? You've now become a contemplative monk.
Mm.
And you can unite all your suffering now to prepare your soul for heaven, but not only that, to have dump trucks of grace fall on each one of your kids and grandkids. And you do it with love. And this is an opportunity that you have to become a saint. And he started to cry. He was a World War II vet.
Mm-hmm.
I told him the story of my dad, who said, every day I have is for all the souls that you guys need to save. That's what I'm offering all this up for.
That's really beautiful.
And the value of that. So I can be old, and as my dad said, getting old isn't for sissies.
No.
Right? It's not for the weak. But the bottom line is, it's so important to give a mission to the older people. And that they're not thought of as, you're a waste, you've hit this age and,
That's our materialist culture. But we can be a unity as a community by being joined together in prayer.
Serve so much. We have to find a way to help them serve and have meaning. And they're a treasure.
Beautiful words. I think we're out of time. So
More or less. I'm sitting here thinking, my dad used to tell me, you should be a lawyer. All you like to do is argue. And there was a lot of truth. Even after he died, I argued all the time with my mother about stupid stuff. It was ridiculous. And she had this saying in her Basque language, Tita Tanto, you know best. And I never got the exact translation, but it more or less means the dummy thinks he knows something. more or less. That's what it means. And it was stupid until the day I thought, finally, because after you argue with your parents, you feel guilty. Just feel bad. Why did it get so bad? Why this? Why that? And essentially with anybody, parents with their kids too. And I know that from confession. I lost my temper with my kid.
right.
But anyway, one day I got this idea. I don't know why I got this idea. It was given to me. It was grace. What would happen if you just gave up trying to prove you're right? Not change what you think, not change your ideas, not change your values or anything, but just give up feeling like you have to prove you're right. Yeah, peace. Peace. And not only peace, but hearing what they had to say.
It changes your whole perspective then.
Yep.
Amen. Good advice. And probably not advice that a young person would be able to offer. And not disparaging young people at all. We all were young at one point.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect example of a pearl of wisdom that you would only get from having made the mistake of thinking you were right and thinking you always had to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And then realizing one day, I don't need to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, would you say our closing prayer to put the cherry on this beautiful conversation?
Yeah. Holy Spirit. Lord, help us to understand each other. Young, millennial, middle-aged, elderly. Because all we desire is what you want for us to live together in peace and unity. So help us to achieve that, especially in this time when we have time to sit back and think and meditate and pray and contemplate you and our relationship with each other. Through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. It's Father Tony.
Thanks.
Beautiful.